You are mine. Hi, Janice. I've never done that music before, so that was quite exciting.
It was, yeah, very exciting, very, yeah, show busy, like. I
Very
like
showbiz.
it. No, it's lovely. It was nice.
So I am absolutely delighted to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy schedule. So let me just introduce you for people who haven't met you before. So Janice is an accredited EFT master trainer and Matrix Reimprinting trainer, and has dedicated her life to helping people through her own experiences of grief. With 3 degrees, including 2 in psychology research, she combines her academic background with deep personal experience to support those facing many kinds of loss. Over the years, she's helped thousands of people develop specialist EFT grief training courses, which we're delighted to be hosting for you very soon, and developed and has written a book called Joy Beyond Grief. Have you got a copy to wave to us? I should have asked you. Yay! And continues to share her expertise through workshops, speaking, and training worldwide. So, Janice, thank you for being here. I thought we'd just start with just hearing a little bit about your journey and what got you into EFT, matrix reimprinting, and why specialize in grief.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tamara. Thank you for inviting me along here to start with. It's lovely to be here with you. I know a lot of people do a lot of trainings with you, so it's a real privilege to be here with you as well. So I'd like to start by saying thank you for that. But yes, my journey. Yeah, I used to be a personal trainer back in my previous life. So I used to do, working with people, helping them to get fit. And it wasn't until I had a sudden loss, the loss of my husband, which was a very dramatic, sudden loss, that things started to change. So, I was doing my training one evening and come back. I'd got 2 daughters, 14-year-old and an 8-year-old. And my youngest daughter was outside playing with my husband and they were just messing about. And my daughter come running in saying, "Oh, Daddy's collapsed. He's on the floor." I thought it was a bit of a joke, like he would often do something silly. But I went outside and very quickly realised he was very poorly. So emergency services come, but unfortunately he'd had such a massive heart attack they couldn't do anything. And he died there and then very suddenly. And no time to say goodbye, no time for anything, literally nothing. And from then on, it was quite a journey. Very, very difficult. And for me, it had that extra layer of difficulty, as for a lot of people that have experienced loss, because I hadn't really grieved the loss of my father, who had died when I was 14. So when I was 14 years old, my dad died, I would call it suddenly, because at 14 I didn't realise how poorly he was, but he'd had lung cancer for quite a while. When he died, it was just swept under the carpet, so to speak. Mum didn't really talk about it. I think I had a month of school and then went back and nobody spoke about it really again. And so I learned to grow up very quickly and just carried on as we do. We survive, we push things down, big stiff upper lip, got a good sense of humour. That carried me along quite a way, and carried on. And it wasn't until my husband died in 2002 that it all come flooding back to hit me in something called what I understand is complicated grief now. And that's true for so many people. And it can be, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but it can be other traumas with the grief on top that can really throw people into absolute turmoil. So I found talking was helpful to some extent, but not greatly helpful, only just keep talking about what had happened, as opposed to really feeling that things were shifting. And then I found EFT with the wonderful Carl Dawson, and everything changed from there. I just really could feel things start to shift. And I'll explain this a little bit more as I go along, but then I trained as an EFT practitioner, and after a while, Matrix Reimprinting, which we'll be talking about today. And that was 20 odd years ago now. So, and then I just specialised in working with grief because of my own experience and because of my research background, as you spoke about in the introduction. I just, I realised it's such a taboo subject. People don't talk about it. It's not dealt with very well in schools or society. So I become very passionate about talking about it, and I do everywhere I can. So that's where I am today.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story, and my heart goes out to you and what you've experienced and gone through, and I'm in awe of how you've been on this hero's journey, really, and are supporting so many people through similar and different experiences. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And well, I guess first of all, you've mentioned Matrix Reimprinting, and I know that a lot of people here watching are very familiar with EFT, but not everyone is familiar with that term. So can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yes, and I'll speak a little bit more about it in different terms when we talk about go a little bit more into detail about grief. But Matrix Reimprinting is a beautifully effective technique which can really help people to transform their lives in so many different ways, in terms of helping them through their traumas, in terms of seeing patterns in their lives and help shifting them and transforming into the life that they really perhaps want, that they haven't been experiencing because of these patterns. But it's a beautiful technique developed by Carl Dawson, who is one of the original EFT masters. You do need EFT. It uses EFT within it. And it's something that I use on a daily basis now with my clients. And basically, just give you a little a little bit of overview with it. It's really almost like going back to where the problem was, where the trauma was, and tapping on that younger you. So the difference between EFT, you have a movie technique that you run, and you sort of see that go, you run it through. Whereas Matrix Reimprinting, it's like you step into the picture of when that event happened. So if it was, I use myself as an example here, so I would step into the picture with my 14-year-old who had that trauma of losing her father, and tap on her at source. And the really good thing about that is you're not the one sort of re-feeling some of those feelings. It's actually the echo, we call them, the energetic consciousness hologram, echo for short, because it's like the echo of you from a younger time. And we actually tap on that echo, and we actually talk to that echo. We release any trauma or stuck emotions. We find out, particularly a big difference with perhaps EFT per se, is that we look for a belief. What belief did we build out of that trauma? And often it's that belief that then leads to these patterns keep reoccurring. And in my case, it was always about, if something good happens, then something bad will happen. Because a little while before my father dies, I'd done some really good, as an athlete, I used to do some running. I'd done some really good runs and it was really good. And then my father died. And then that pattern sort of continued. And it's how I perceived my life. It wasn't the truth, but it's what I perceived my life. So we can go back and help that 14-year-old with those beliefs. We shift the whole picture around a little bit. Certain things we don't do, because often people will say to me, oh, but go back and change your memories, is that right? And it's like, well, if it's really helping that younger you and you, then why wouldn't you? Yeah, it's not denying anything. And really big traumas such as major abuses and death, we don't bring people back from the dead in these pictures or anything like that. And we don't deny things that have happened, but we just make it more comfortable for that echo in that picture. And then we do a re-imprinting process, which really involves the heart, as we know a lot with heart math. And the heart brain coherence, we actually re-imprint that picture, bringing it all the way through the body, this new picture without the trauma, with the opposite of the belief, that perhaps somebody had made from a trauma, and shift that whole picture. And sometimes people are, when we check in afterwards, like we would do with EFT with SUDS levels, if we check in afterwards, sometimes people can't even really get that clear picture of what happened. It's more the new picture. Other people can still see that, what happened, but the energy's gone out of it, so it's much more neutral. So it's different, but I always sort of see it as an extension on from EFT, and that's beautiful. And I use both with my grieving clients. So it's an amazing technique.
Thank you so much for that beautiful explanation. And I think what I would say to my for those of us, the people watching who are our EFT family, is what I specifically like about Matrix Reimprinting is, first of all, one of the questions we often get asked in our EFT trainings is, do I tap on how I feel or how that younger version of me felt back then? And with EFT, the answer is we tap on how I feel. When we're doing Matrix, we're tapping on how they feel. So like you said, we step into that picture with them. And what I find so powerful about that process of stepping in with your little you, or echo, is that it's so powerful in releasing aspects of that problem that perhaps with the tell the story or whatever technique you're using in your EFT practice, sometimes there are little kind of stuck aspects that Matrix is so good at finding and releasing and clearing. So that for me is a very powerful thing. And then of course the way you say the re-imprinting through the heart, and I think that is a beautiful process that it's kind of game changing, that process with the re-imprinting. Go on.
And just adding into that as well, it's that when we remembering a trauma, how we're feeling about remembering that trauma is different than that younger echo, and it really highlights the differences on that, both which may need tapping on in different ways. But when you actually go back to that younger you and you sort of ask them how they're feeling, and some people think that's going to be difficult, but it actually is much easier than a lot of people think. That's all I can say until you've tried it. But their feelings can be quite different, and what they need can be quite different. And by shifting and changing that has that effect on how you are today. So that's really interesting. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what's really amazing about Matrix, I mean, is that it doesn't have to be just used on past trauma. It can be used on future things as well.
Absolutely, it can.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. That can be amazing on future imprinting, really. So, we can often we sort of go back into something from the past and then take that forward to the future. So if there's a belief that I'm not good enough, we can shift that and, give that younger echo a sense of feeling good enough. And then take that forward into the future and look at situations that might be coming up where you feel really good about yourself, and we can really imprint that. It's almost like stepping into that echo to feel what that feels like in the future re-imprinting. And I've seen some absolutely amazing results from that. I think different people do different work with that in different ways. Joe Dispenza does it with his visualizations, but from a Matrix Reimprinting point of view, we can do it as in imprinting the future and bringing it back to you. And I've just literally seen so many amazing things from that. One example is a close colleague of mine, and she is doing a PhD, and she said one of my modules that's coming up is maths. She said, and it's not my good subject, so can we visualize me doing really well? And we went into into the future, and she was all relaxed, and she'd revised, and everything had gone really well. And that was the module she got the highest mark in the end. And she was blown away, because that was her least, her least favorite and her least experience. So she, on 2 levels, she was not looking forward to it, and she got the highest mark in that compared to all her other modules, because we did a beautiful imprint with that. Yeah, amazing. And for me personally, I use it within my grief work. Perhaps funerals are coming up, but perhaps there's some conflict between family members and things that can often happen, and we actually go into the future and run that whole funeral through in the best way possible. And that is, I've seen, people have come back to me and said, oh my gosh, that just went absolutely beautifully, and I was originally so worried about it. So yeah, future imprinting is great.
Amazing. Wow, I've got tingles from that. That is so beautiful and so moving.
Yeah. What amazing. It's sacred, to me. Grief and death is a sacred process, as is birth, and we really need to get that sacredness back into it. And we can do that by doing these type of things. We're taking out that human fighting element and who said what, when, and why, and just trying to bring that sacredness of that passing experience, that transforming from one being here body to something else, so that can be great.
Wow. So I think that kind of like that transitions really nicely into talking about the work that you do with grief, and you call it joy beyond grief, which I find so inspiring. So what can you share about that?
Yeah, actually, just before we go into that, Tamara, if it's okay, I'm also just going to say that our Matrix work also can go back. We can go back to past lives. We can go back to the womb. We can go back to ancestral grief, which I'm doing a lot of now. There just seems to be the energy in the world at the moment where we're doing a lot of ancestral healing. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're experiencing a grief yourself at the moment, it's very raw. The last thing you want to worry about is anything other griefs that are going on. You can be focusing on you. But it may be appropriate at some point to look at that as ancestral griefs, especially where people feel like they're grieving but don't know what they're grieving about because they can't pinpoint anything. Well, actually, it can go back to ancestral or past life grief, and Matrix Reimprinting has been really amazing for that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for it. Obviously, this is such important work in bringing those aspects up. Is there any other ways of working with Matrix that we haven't talked about before we segue into?
No, I think that's it. Sort of past, present, and future. Really, people can use it for all sorts of, for anything. For performance. Visualizing yourself doing a performance, as one could tap with it, with EFT. So Matrix can be used for everything, and it's really, really good if you've got a haunting memory of something in your life. That's quite a clear-cut way of working with Matrix. If you've got just a haunting memory that's been there, and you don't know how to get past that, then again, Matrix can work well with that as well. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know.
No worries. No, so it can work in a lot of different ways. But as you were saying, I use it to work with I work with clients with all sorts of issues going on, but predominantly with grief now. That's what I specialize in. So as you said, joy beyond grief. Yeah, and it can be quite a controversial title for some people, but it really, I wanted to help people to really see that there's a transformative aspect of grief. As there is all trauma, there is the potential for a transformative aspect. And if we can maneuver through, particularly with grief, which is a natural process, grief, death, birth, they're all natural processes. What happens is we've all got some sort of trauma or something that's happened to us, and that all gets thrown in the mix. And we don't come into grief as an empty space, as an empty shell, because we've had our life up till that grief with whatever's happened. And that's why everybody's grieving experience is unique. Every single person on this planet's grieving experience is unique, and it's really important to honour that and to really respect that, and bring in that sacredness. So we bring that into working with grief, and it can be, it can be a transformation. Not in the rawness of grief. I tend to go away from the stages of grief. I adore all the work with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was an amazing lady in the grief palliative care arena. If anybody knows of her, I'm sure you do, with the stages of grief. But for me, I think we moved on. And when we work with EFT, we work with what the client presents. So it's the same. So for me, I look at grief in three ways: the rawness, which can go on for however long, which is those deep feelings, the pain, the real rawness of grief, and then we hopefully start to integrate that grief. So some people look at it as there's your grief, and you grow around it. And you grow bigger around it as you bring back into your life certain things that perhaps you'd stopped, and would grow around it. That's one way of looking at it, developed by Dr. Lois Tonkin. And that's integrating. So how are we going to integrate? And another really big part of the integration is, dealing with any shocks, any stuck emotions, any stuck feelings, any memories that are haunting for us. Unfortunately, in this day and age, there's a lot of people that lose loved ones in traumatic medical spaces, because they're in hospitals, and lots can go on. So then that integration period, maybe we work on some of those memories of how a person passed. And the other part of that I look at is that stuckness. Is somebody come to see me that's stuck in grief 10, 20, 30, 40 years after they've experienced a loss? And unfortunately, that can happen quite a lot. So I look at it in those ways, but then the more we integrate it, the more we can see that there's that potential for transformation. I look at it in terms of perhaps honouring that person that's died. I know a gentleman that's father used to do lots of really long walks, and he was never really interested in walking. But when his father died, he thought, after we did some work around different aspects of his grief, his unique grief, he thought, I'm going to do some walks in honour of my dad. And then that just flooded into all sorts of travel blogs and all sorts. So that developed for him into a different life that he never dreamt of, but he loves, and also he feels was really honouring for his father. So there's lots of examples that people just bringing back dreams that they had in childhood, that they think, well, do you know what? Life is precious and it is short. It's a bit of a wake-up call. So let's make the best of our lives. So in lots of ways, it can definitely be joy beyond grief.
Amazing. It sounds absolutely brilliant. And is there anything else that that we haven't covered when it comes to the grief the grief specialist workshop that you're doing? And just to say that I'm delighted that you're coming over to Kings Langley to be running both a Matrix course at the end of September and the Joy Beyond Grief course at the end of November. And we're going to obviously post all the details, but is there anything else? I
mean, the Joy Beyond Grief course that I run, I did it because in society, as I said, it's a taboo subject. And that also comes across within working as a practitioner, because we've been brought up in a society where not everybody, obviously, but as generally, it's not a much spoken about subject, or what do we say? And the same can be for practitioners as well. So I really wanted to help practitioners feel really comfortable working with anyone who comes to them for any grief. Now, grief isn't just about bereavement. It can be loss of a job, loss of health, loss of a relationship, loss of the life you thought you were going to have because something happened in your childhood, loss of independence, loss of identity. And I could go on with thousands of different types of losses that people grieve from, and they don't even realize that's actually what's going on. It's a grief. So my training helps people understand about the different losses. It also helps people understand about the different types of grief, because there can be named up to 40 different types of griefs. We go over the main ones that will really help you to help your clients understand where they are. You know, some people aren't into perhaps labels, but it can just be a really helpful thing to know if your client, for example, is sort of grieving but has nowhere to turn and can't say anything to anyone, and that could really be perceived as what we call disenfranchised grief, where you're almost not allowed to grieve. Yeah. So all these different types of grief, if you as a practitioner understand, you can better help your client. So we go over that. I also bring a new tool in that you can use with your EFT and your Matrix, if you do the course, the Matrix course as well. My Hearts of Grief, which is a really good tool, and you get a workbook for that. That you can use, and I train you how to use that to help clients, and it makes it a lot easier for you to help grieving people. And as I say, we go into that rawness, those different stages, look at different theories. We also look at continuing bonds, which is an important part nowadays of the grieving, and that's about how is your client going to have this new relationship with the person that's died. Is it going to be on an anniversary that we're going to prepare them and help them to have a celebratory day, as opposed to, oh, it's coming up, what do I do, head under the duvet, which I did for many years. Now I have lots of dates that I know I'm setting aside, and I'll go for a walk with my daughters in nature. Beautiful nature. What other things can help? So we go over that. And the other thing I think is quite important that I do include, well, there's lots more, is understanding what the medical profession's view on grief is now, because there is something called prolonged grief disorder now, which in my mind is really quite interesting, because there is no recognized time for grieving, because it's unique. And yet we now have a disorder that if you're grieving after a certain amount, or you're grieving for a certain period of time, then it could be called a disorder. So we go into understanding a lot more about that and what it means and how you can help your clients if that's what's happened. So lots and lots included in that. I try and put as much in as I can. I've been doing the course for about 7-8 years now, so I've tried to condense it and bring as much in to help people as much as I can as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we've got some lovely comments here. Liz says, hello, amazing ladies. I've trained and worked with Tamara for years and did a grief retreat with Janice. Both such experts. I couldn't recommend them more. Thank you, Liz. That's so sweet. And Dermot's saying, really looking forward to attending both courses. Looking forward to seeing you, Dermot. That's wonderful.
Yes, looking forward to meeting you. And I actually come from near Kingsland. Well, I was born in Harrow, but I lived for a long time in Boxwoodmore in Hertfordshire. So when Tamara said she was from Kingsland, I was like, oh, it's just up the road. So that's very exciting for me to come back there as well. Looking forward to it.
Wonderful. So if there are any other questions, please do pop them in the comments, and we'll endeavour to answer them either on this call or afterwards. We'll still have access to the comments. So let me just pop the, if you did want to join us, then I'm just going to put the details of both courses here so that you can come and join us. So just put them, in theory, it's worked. Yeah, yes, that worked.
Yeah, that's great.
So those are the details of both the courses, and I'm really, really looking forward to having you come and train us all, because that's going to be fantastic. So is there anything that we have not covered? Any other work? Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I think we've got through what I wanted to say today with everything. But you know, it's all I can say as well with the grief work. It's so beautifully rewarding to see people really shift and change from deep, dark grief into transforming their lives. And I think EFT and Matrix Reimprinting are just amazing tools for that. So I really look forward to you coming along and enjoying both those courses and meeting you. It'd be great.
Oh, thank you. And Liz is just saying, I went on the retreat with severe grief about relationship breakdown. It lent itself to that too. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks,
That's
Liz.
wonderful. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for watching. Thank you for taking this time with us, Janice. We really, really appreciate it. And I
My
can't
pleasure.
wait till the end of September till we see each other again in person.
Brilliant. Can't wait. Really look forward to it and meeting everyone that's coming along. It'd be great to see you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.